Hey Daniela, let's take a look at your scene. I see your notes here. I like, all right, all right. Yeah, your cycle seems like it's getting cut off. So maybe there's not enough frames, like you're lacking frames. Because when I look at the first frame, um, and then I look at the last frame, so they don't look like they're gonna loop. Like I'm missing so there's no frame of the red foot making like a contact pose. So pose like that is not right. But this pose is like missing, and I don't know if it's coming later in the timeline. So this goes from 1 to 31, so it should loop on 2, right? Um, Like here, we see the contact pose. Let me turn off ghosting. Here we see the contact pose from the blue foot. So we're missing this kind of equivalent pose. And seeing, like, let me try to find the flipped pose. Yeah, so the red foot here goes back and it comes forward, but it doesn't quite make it to this. So that's something we got to figure out. I don't know if it's in your Maya file and we need to play blast out beyond frame 31 to capture it, or if somehow it got lost in the shuffle. But I'll try to just look at the blue foot for now, right? The blue foot, if you watch the blue foot, it's not cycling quite right either, because we see at the end it kind of pops and snaps up to here, right? Goes from here to here, and then it just kind of hangs out here, like floating. So if all of this feels a little overwhelming or difficult to unravel the mystery of what the heck's going on, please feel free to sign up for my office hours or just send me an email. We'll figure out a time that works for you, and we can get this back into a loop, right? Like a proper loop. Yeah, because even if I watch the blue foot, I'm sure you can see it go from here to here. That's like a huge jump, and then it barely moves over the next few frames. So there's certainly some spacing issues going on and timing issues. But in general, like, this is pretty cool. I would say in this passing pose, I'd want to see that blue foot brought lower to the ground, and not be picked up so high. Like the blue foot's toes can be just like a tiny bit above the ground plane. You know what I mean? So otherwise, if it's too high stepping, it kind of looks like marching, and that should also be kind of like carried through to all the frames afterwards, where the foot is lower off the ground, and then only when it's like just about ready to flip. Like even here on this pose, keep it lower in the back half as best you can. And then, yeah, in this contact pose, it takes like 4 frames for the foot to go flat on the ground. I would have it go flat in 2 frames almost, because the weight's going to want to get placed on this foot. So leave everything the same, just change the rotation to go down on this frame to be flat on the ground. If you can, on these poses, try to get it where the heel stays on the ground. I don't know if you're adding some like heel raise on that control, if that's starting to get feathered in, or if it's that the center of gravity is a little too high. I don't think your center of gravity is too high, because I can tell there's like a little bit of bend happening at the knee, which is fine. It's very subtle. It's great. So maybe it's heel lift happening here, but I would try to keep at least until here the heel flat on the ground. Because here it feels like it's rotated up too much off the ground. Like maybe here it would just start to pick up a tiny bit. And I know that this is like really nitpicky notes, but it's really going to help convince that the weight and everything is correct on this walk. Leave the heel down. That's the thing that causes this back leg to straighten out, is that this heel is as low as possible, right? So try to just keep it lower until you have to pick the heel up off the ground due to the geometry of the leg. I don't know if that makes sense when I say like leave it on the ground until it's almost like until the leg isn't long enough to accommodate it being on the ground anymore, and this ambling person is forced to like lift it up. That's a tiny thing. I would also take a look at your I think it's translate Z is the control responsible for moving the blue foot back in space. From the when it's fully on the ground, which I'm hoping is like here. So from this frame to the frame where you pick it up off the ground, which I would say is probably this frame. Getting back to the TZ on that foot, it should be very like consistent, right? So all the spacing on that foot should be almost exactly the same, because we're on the treadmill. You have to imagine like the ground is moving backwards at a very consistent pace. So that curve is gonna look kind of like a straight line in your graph editor. Like you may have a bunch of knots, and I don't know if this is going to be the orientation of that curve, but it's going to look something like this. Maybe it's like this with how you have it set up in the file. But all of these, you don't even need these keys here in the middle. These keys you can cut out and just have this key and this key being linear, which is a tangent type, but you kind of want this to be just like a perfectly straight line as the foot's moving back in space. That should be a pretty easy thing to clean up. So taking a look at your arms and stuff is pretty good. One of the things I feel like is happening from here to here, and maybe this is just my imagination, but I wonder if your cog control, you know, when I say cog control, I mean that big one, not the pelvis one, but the big one. I wonder if that doesn't have a little bit of forward and back movement on it. It feels like it does when I'm playing through it. It could be an illusion introduced by the twist, but especially like right here, you know, it feels like the whole character is moving forward in space. Oh, and then maybe here it starts moving back in space. So that's gonna be tough to work with. So on that big cog control, let me see where that stupid drawing that I made was. Here, you really should only have TY up and down on it as far as translations. And of course, TX in this view, but having it translate forward and back is going to be tough. I would get rid of any forward and back translation that you have throughout the animation. That's probably again going to be TZ, but I can't say for sure. All right. Yeah. So I think get those things kind of cleaned up. I'm going to look at it from the front view now. Yeah, okay. So I'm seeing like there may be, let me zoom in over here on what the pelvis is doing left and right wise. And again, we don't have a full cycle here, but it's kind of staying almost exactly the same left and right wise. And then it starts to move to the left, which is cool. But then it seems to just hit a wall. You know, when I say hit a wall, it doesn't seem to like ease out of that motion. And then it kind of goes over and then stays the same. And then it jumps over here pretty quickly. So you gotta like watch your spacing on that stuff. Because it feels like, let's see if when we turn on ghosting, if we can kind of see. Whoops. So yeah, see how it's like all playing around in this exact kind of same space right here over multiple frames, and then it like goes from here to here. Like that's a pretty big move for your first jump. And then we're not easing out of this. So it starts to ease into this a little, but I kind of feel like we need to ease out of it to get back over here. So your T, I think that this is your TX curve, but I could be wrong. Whichever one is responsible for it to go side to side should look sort of like something like this. It should always be kind of going back and forth, right? Between, like, this will maybe be the left, maybe this is the right, this is back over to the left, you know? I think what's happening right now is it looks like here in this range, it's like staying the same. So imagine that curve is going to be flat. And then it starts to go over kind of fast. And then it comes back really fast without a lot of ease out. Let me do that. So it looks like it goes flat and then it probably changes really fast. I bet these are like really sharp corners here. And then it seems to hang out again like there. And then it looks like maybe it goes down like that, you know? So this needs to be more of like a curve that interpolates like this between those points. That's what I'm guessing is going on. I could be wrong, but I think, you know, zoomed in, you can see how it kind of pops over to the right, pops over to the left, and it's kind of lacking a smooth left and right kind of motion to it. And then also pay attention to your arms from the front view. Like the same thing will kind of apply to arms. So let's see, when we start looking at, if I look at the left and right of what's happening with the arms, it's like I'm just trying to kind of approximate the edge here. It's all very much the same. And then it starts to go out a little, but then it jumps really big. And then it jumps back the other way. You know, that's like that kind of motion. So this is causing, and then it jumps back here and then it totally stops instead of like easing out of that motion. You know what I mean? So keep an eye on the spacing of your arms. Just take a pass at that and make sure that you have nice transitions, like slowing in and slowing down and going the other way. And like, you know what I'm saying? Like as the arms go through its swing, I want to see like a little more attention placed on that part. Yeah. Yeah, so I would clean up that stuff. I wouldn't worry about doing like any more. This is splined, right? Yeah, this is splined. So let's look at that stuff. Let's get your cycle back into a cycle. If you need time for office hours, I'm available. Just email me when you're free and we'll set up a time to meet. I can help you get this back into a cycle and, you know, clarify any of these notes if none of them are all that clear. But yeah, great stuff. Thank you for the submission. I look forward to seeing your progress next week. And yeah, see you next week.